reestablished the assessment process. Accreditation is for full accreditation was recommended for this agency, but it does not stop there. The greatest issue that I've looked at is the internal systemic and institutional racism that exists. No one speaks on that, and that is the fact. We have not hired in a fair and equitable practice. We have not diversified and promoted to positions of power, not stripes, not a lieutenant, but positions of power that can really make real change. And we've done those things. And that's why we're having some successes. We've gone back and created a recruitment process where we're targeting and going into minority communities. We had to reevaluate how we were selecting people because Black and brown people were not given the same opportunities that our white brothers and sisters were given. We pulled numerous people out of a candidate pool and hired them. We also have not, as an institute, as an organization, given internal employees an opportunity to be in part of the law enforcement role. Our Department of Detention is predominantly housed and managed by Black people. And yet we had over 200 plus different deputies there who were cross-certified and wanting to be officers, but never given that opportunity. If we can't admit to the culture and systemic issues that exist, you're never going to fix them. And the progress that we're having right now is a byproduct of having a right leadership position that understand these issues and not turning a blind eye to them.
Thank you for your response. I relinquish the podium back to our moderator.
All right, I'm here. That was very exciting. Let me put my glasses back on. Next, we have the next panelist from representing the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, Mr. Noah Hyatt. Mr. Hyatt? Mr. Hyatt? Agent Noah Hyatt. Okay. We'll go to the next. Oh, here he is. Take yourself off mute, Mr. Hyatt. You're still on mute, Mr. Hyatt. Okay, okay, your camera's right, but now take yourself off mute.
Here we go. How about now?
Welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that delay. I want to first thank Marsha Ellis for that wonderful introduction, President Marsha Ellis, and the dynamic ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for hosting this unique candidates forum. I'll go right into, without further delay, go into my questions. The following question is addressed to Mr. Clark, Mr. Cohen, if he joins, and Mr. Watley. You have 90 seconds to respond. And here is the first question. There are certain police records that can be administratively disposed of after 1 year, which is pursuant to a Florida statute. How does BSO currently maintain officer misconduct records, and what would you do to ensure all records are maintained and transparent throughout that officer's tenure with BSO? We'll start first with Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. First and foremost, when you're the sheriff of Broward County, you're not a legislature. So if you want to change the law, you're going to need to go through the legislature in the state of Florida. But I can tell you personally that dealing with personnel records when you're trying to get them for bad cops from Broward Sheriff's Office is almost impossible. There needs to be a complete overhaul of the records division at Broward Sheriff's Office. I can tell you in my career, I've requested records several times, if not numbers of times, and there's constant delay, there's constant backlog. We know for a fact records exist. An employee may have just retired on June 1st, and they're told us they didn't have records because they don't keep them from 2013 back. So I can tell you that whoever's overseeing that is not doing an adequate job. You need to keep those records. They need to be kept in a format in which are available, because that's why we have the Florida Public Records Request, and it needs to be, that process needs to be changed. First and foremost, Broward Sheriff's Office has a human resources department, but they don't have a real human resources leader. They have someone from law enforcement leading that department. There needs to be an actual human resources individual who's a professional to come in there and overhaul a lot of those different things. And so as the next sheriff, I plan to bring someone in to overlook those and to make those changes, because the way it's run now, it's a disaster.
Thank you. Have you completed your thought?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. We will now, same question to Mr. Watley. Do you need me to repeat the question, sir?
No, you don't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
I agree a lot with what Wayne Clark stated. You have to change the law if you don't want documents destroyed, because that puts the department in civil liability. But as far as things like evaluations and so forth like that, if there's any kind of investigation and so forth, that has to be put in the yearly or monthly or quarterly evaluations of the personnel. And that's a thing that they haven't done in the past. They would write about the work or whatever, but they wouldn't put down about their discipline that they received. So I think when it comes to the evaluations, if they receive discipline, they have to ensure that that is marked in that document, because that one won't be destroyed. That'll be just part of the regular personnel file, not their discipline file. They're two different things. And like Clark said, you need to hire an outside expert dealing with human resources, not a cop having them shuffle papers. It has to be somebody that is highly regarded and an expert in the field of human resources. So that's my answer on that one. I want to speak about Tony. He said that there have been no power promotions at the Broward Sheriff's Office. Yeah, if you look at this panel, you got Alvin Pollock, who was a colonel, you got Smalling, who was a major, and then you got Willie Jones, but he'll say there's no power promotions. So even though Alvin Pollock, he was a colonel, now he didn't work his way up to colonel. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Wiley, thank you. We'll now move into the next question. And this question, the following question, will be addressed to Mr. Jones, Mr. Pollock, Mr. Vasquez, and Clark. The question is, what is your position on the use of deadly force for a fleeing or unarmed suspect? We'll start with Mr. Jones. Do you need me to repeat that question, or are you okay?
No, I'm okay. Can I chime in on your former other question about the records? And the records is I was a records manager, and it does not state you have to destroy those records. It gives you an option. So you can actually keep those records a little bit longer. To answer your question, no one unarmed fleeing the police should be shot in the back. So my position is no. We don't do warning shots. We don't do shooting in the ground. We don't pull out weapons to intimidate people. If you're going to use that weapon as deadly force, you must be in fear of your life or protecting someone else's life. So my position is no. The law clearly states we don't shoot fleeing felons. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And thank you, Mr. Jones, for that answer. We will now move to Mr. Pollock. Do you need me to repeat the question, or are you okay?
No, sir. Shooting at fleeing felons, never, no. We should never shoot, not even warning shots at fleeing felons. No one should be shot or deadly force used when you're fleeing away from the police officers, because there is no threat. The only way there's a threat is if you can see that they are getting ready to confront another person and do them bodily harm, but absolutely never, under no circumstances. Warning should be given verbally, but never with the deadly force.
Thank you so much for your response, Mr. Pollock. We will now engage Mr. Vasquez with the same question. Do you need me to repeat?
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hyatt. I greatly appreciate it. The answer to that is just plain no. No, you should not shoot anyone that's fleeing. If they're fleeing because they want an avenue of escape. We can use technology to catch this person later. The best thing that we have is time to catch this person. So when it comes to that, no, the answer is straight no. And I know that every candidate here feels the same. So I will tell you, what we do need to do is to make sure that we have accountability. We have better training on our officers so that this way, this does not happen. That we have accountability, we have a civilian review board, and not only that, that we have members of our community from the NAACP, from the ACLU involved in evaluating our police officers in situations that happen like this. That's what we need. We need leaders that are going to lead not only the agency, but also our community. Therefore, my answer is no, and I expect that everyone's answer here should be no as well. Thank you.
Mr. Vasquez, thank you for your response. And our final, the question goes finally to Mr. Clark. Do you need the question repeated, Mr. Clark, or are you okay?
Could you repeat it, Mr. Hyatt?
Sure. Let me repeat that question for you, Mr. Clark. The question is, what is your position on the use of deadly force for a fleeing or unarmed suspect?
Okay, your question is two-part. You're saying fleeing or unarmed suspect. So are they fleeing with, or, well, okay, first of all, our law enforcement officers, we have to make sure that they have good judgment. That's in the hiring and training process. These gentlemen, or these men or women, are tasked with making split-second decisions. So your question, and the way it's worded, is somewhat of an issue. Of course, if someone is fleeing and they're unarmed, absolutely not use of deadly force. But if they're fleeing and they're armed and they do something to engage the officers, then I think there's an issue. And I'm not sure if the question came up because of Atlanta or not, and that's the fact pattern I have in my head. But we have to make sure in the training process that our men and women have the proper training and best practices in place, because it's split-second decisions. So you've got to make sure that you've got men and women there that are there to make good judgment decisions on the split second. Because, like I said, if they're armed and they turn around while they're fleeing, then you need to use equal force, because you need to, you have to protect yourself and those around you. They're fleeing and they're unarmed. I think it's a different question. I think, like Mr. Vasquez says, there's technology to track people down, and there's ways to apprehend them later. So, depends on the fact pattern. A lot of this is going to depend on, in the field situations, which is a split-second decision. And as the leader of the Sheriff's Department, I'm responsible to make sure that they're trained properly.
Mr. Clark, thank you for your response. That completes my portion. I will yield back to our moderator, Brother Brian Johnson.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Next up will be the gentleman representing the Zeta Chi chapter of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, Mr. Dr. Frank Gaines. Dr. Gaines is the next panelist. Okay.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you to the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta for hosting this event and also allowing me to be a part of the panel. The first question is for candidate Israel. Mr. Israel, what are the three most important challenges facing BSO, and how will you address those changes required? You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Israel.
Good evening, Dr. Gaines. Right now, BSO has become so dysfunctional, and I am not taking a shot at Greg Toney, but he was a sergeant of a police department, a very small police department. His last year's assignment was he had the midnight shift with 3 or 4 officers. And now to lead 5,500 people and to undo all the things we've done, like to fire community outreach and expect community outreach to be done by police officers and to be insistent. Would you want Derek Chauvin, the man who killed George Floyd, would you want him coming into your community as a community outreach officer? Certainly not. You need men and women who come from communities. You need men and women who grew up in communities coming back with their hearts and their minds. Not everybody wants to sit down with a cop. Not everybody wants to sit down, with somebody with a gun and a badge. And the greatest challenge that I will have is when my first speech to my staff when I became sheriff was to make sure they understood that drug addicts, alcoholics, homeless people were not problem people. They were people with problems. And this agency, from my first command staff meeting, will understand that Black Lives Matter. There's no extension to that sentence. There's no caveat. Black Lives Matter. And that's how we'll run our agency.
Thank you, Mr. Israel.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the next question is for candidate Smalling. Same question. What are the three most important challenges facing BSO, and how will you address those changes required?
Thank you, Dr. Gaines. The first challenge that I see is problems within the agency. And when I talk about problems, I'm talking about within the staff, the morale. I think that part of that is because of the leadership, and not just the current leadership, but the leadership over the past few years. There has been no stability. There has not been any type of accountability. And accountability doesn't necessarily mean need to be negative. There's no communications. I believe the current sheriff has yet to reach out to all the departments within BSO. So that's a problem. It's a large agency, but that goes into the trust factor amongst employees. That's the first thing I see. The other thing I see is communications outside of BSO. It's important that we restore these relationships with our different communities. Not every community is the same. There's 17 different districts, and I can tell you that each district has their own idiosyncrasies, and that's something that needs to be taken care of as well. And I think the third thing that needs to be addressed is accountability. I think that our deputies who are involved in misconduct, and not just the individuals that we're seeing on camera, but I'm talking about the ones that we don't, are also the ones that we need to address as well as leaders.
Thank you, Mr. Smalling. Sheriff Tony, this question is for you. Same question. What are the three most important challenges facing BSO, and how will you address the changes required?
Sure, Dr. Gaines, thank you for the question. I'd like to take time to refute and rebuttal some of the commentary that was made, but quite frankly, I think it would be a waste of your time and the viewer's time. The realities are, coming into this organization, the primary thing I needed to do was change the culture. The culture of that politics will trump public safety. And in order to do that, I had to promote and put people in place that understood this agency better than anyone on this particular panel. Our current administration, from the rank of colonel all the way down to major, comprised roughly 500 years of experience. That was the first side of it. Then we had to reinvest millions of dollars to make sure we would never again allow for students to be killed inside of our schools because we weren't focused on the things that were important. The other side of it is the importance behind recruiting a diverse employment population. Most of this community don't even realize that out of the roughly 1,500 law enforcement officers, only 230 of them were Black when I came into this organization. There's cries for diversity. There's cries that there's been a sincere effort to be fair and equitable in this organization, and it has not. We had to put forth some comprehensive programs in terms of our neighborhood support teams, where law enforcement and civilians are now engaged in a positive setting. We're deploying our law enforcement officers out into the community to help rectify this mistrust that has come as a byproduct of years and years of lack of accountability in this organization. When I accepted command, in comparison, in 2018, we had 8 use of force cases where no one was disciplined or terminated. During my command, we had 6 and 4 were terminated. I think this is the path we need to be on in terms of real accountability and continue to use the funds that this community have in a positive setting.
Thank you, Mr. Tony.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Sheriff Tony. Okay, the next question, same question, is for candidate Watley. What are the 3 most important challenges facing BSO, and how will you address the changes required?
Well, the 3 basic things that you desperately need in the Broward Sheriff's Office is, 1, to change the overall morale of the agency. And that starts by having a sheriff that is truthful and honest and he has a history of integrity. Number 2 is training. Training has to be changed in the Broward Sheriff's Office. Under Sheriff Tony, training was mandated that was under the MMA mentality, ground and pound. Yet when the deputies got in trouble for using techniques that they were taught under Sheriff Tony, he fired them. No accountability for himself. And then the hiring process. You got to change the hiring process and vet better people with a higher moral standard, not just on qualifications, but on a moral standard. That's one of the most important things that need to be changed. And as far as the agency itself, it's not going to change until the leadership changes. Tony got that position based on fraud, deception, and lies. Then you have Scott Israel that didn't want to take accountability for his actions in the past. And now you got Alvin Pollack, who's running, saying that he was a colonel, but he really never worked his way up the rank structure. And when he got in trouble, he didn't hold himself accountable. So you need leadership that will hold themselves accountable and then hold the personnel accountable. So you got to set the example. So that's the biggest thing. Until you get those things complete, the community is not going to trust you no matter what kind of program you have. The leader has to trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. The next question is addressed to Kennedy Jones. Mr. Jones, what is your position on the implementation of citizen oversight committees and their ideal composition, collaboration, and reporting transparency?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's the second pillar of the President Obama's 21st century model, policy and oversight. And it clearly states that when you put together this board, you put the board together from people from the community, stakeholders from the community. It talks about not bringing former police officers, lawyers, and doctors to the board. It clearly states that you need to bring everyday people who have everyday occurrences with the police. So the oversight board will be a makeup of people recommended by community organizations such as this, the clergy, to come and sit on the board. They will be trained to understand the work, the composition of what law enforcement do. Once we put them together, they will have the ability to recommend discipline, see through discipline, see records, see it before it comes out. They will have full jurisdiction when they're doing the oversight. That's what the oversight committee would do. But one of the things that your other question was, we're not going to change anything until we build trust and legitimacy with the people that we are serving. If the people of the community don't believe we're there to protect them, to serve them, they're not going to believe in us. So one of the first things we have to do is build that trust. And once we rebuild that trust and put the oversight committee there and the community policing piece there, then we can change the culture and the direction of this agency.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Sheriff Tony, this question goes back to you. What is your position on the implementation of citizen oversight committees and their ideal composition, collaboration, and reporting transparency?
Well, thank you, Dr. Gaines. I 100% support the concept and idea behind it. However, going back to earlier questions and comments about the collective bargaining agreement and how that prohibits certain activities that take place, that is not something that could simply be done without going amongst the union and doing some negotiating sides. However, what could be done is what I have done, which was to put forth a professional standards committee, which is a hybrid of both law enforcement and civilians, and hired a judge to chair it to ensure that we get an objective view and recommendation on disciplinary actions. To supplement that, I've spearheaded, along with Mayor Honas, the first civilian review board that the county will be putting together so that we can have a second set of eyes on. I've assigned our judge to work with the civilian review board development over at the county. And I'm the only law enforcement as of right now that have publicly made that commitment in this entire county. And so I think as we move forward in developing the civilian review board, it must take on a very diverse setting in terms of who participate in it, and diversity not just being of skin color or gender, but also the qualifications and the background of individuals who would chair or sit on this review board. because we want educated, we want challenging individuals to be able to speak assertively and a matter of fact when it comes to what type of disciplinary action should be taken. And that exact same model is currently in this agency where it hasn't been in the past, sir.
Thank you, Sheriff Tony. My final question is for candidate Vasquez. Mr. Vasquez, again, what is your position on the implementation of citizen oversight committees and their ideal composition, collaboration, and reporting transparency?
Yes, I'm 100% supportive of that. I will 100% support the AACP, the ACLU, and religious leaders. What we are forgetting is that our community must get trust from our law enforcement. We need to make sure that we have accountability and transparency. We're failing to do that right now. We need to make sure that we have an oversight on this, a CART program where civilians show up on scene to get to the grassroots of our police issues and our police problems that we're having now today. Let's fix the problem now and not wait 6 months later so that this has to go through a review board and everything. We have a witness right there. So changing our culture needs to change our policies and procedures. We are the members of our community. We need to hire professionals, mental health professionals, to not only evaluate our victims and our suspects, but also our officers. We need accountability on our officers and have a biannual evaluation, mental health evaluation on them. And if we continue doing that, we can fix our culture there. So yes, 100% on that. And we need to make sure that we open our police investigations to our community. They are the person in charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. That completes my segment, and I will yield the floor to Mark Johnson from Phi Beta Sigma.
Mr. Johnson, are you ready to answer your questions?
Yes, I am.
All right, take over, sir.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you to the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta sorority for allowing me to be a panelist tonight. It is truly an honor and a privilege. Good evening to everybody tuning in, and good evening to the candidates. My first question goes out to candidates Clark and Watley. And the question is, please explain your position on civil citations and whether that program is working to improve the criminal justice system. So, candidate Clark, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, sir. You ready?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Got 90 seconds.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay. Well, first and foremost, if you look at the civil citation program and you speak to the men and women that work for Broward Sheriff's Office, you can see that many of them don't like it. What I think needs to happen is it needs to be pulled back a little bit. We're starting to get way too expansive here. We have way too many avenues for repeat offenders to continue to get released and to continue to get out on the streets. We need to bring back law and order in Broward County. We need to enforce the laws of Broward County. As the sheriff, I'm not a legislator. I'm not going to legislate to change the laws. If I wanted to do that, I would apply to work as a legislature. I would have filled out different paperwork, and I would have gone and run in a different office for a different position. I'm here to be the sheriff of Broward County, and that's to clean up Broward County, and that's to make Broward County safer. Over the last few years, we've removed a lot of different aspects in the way we used to police the community, and the way we used to arrest people, and the way we used to put people in jail. We need, if you're a criminal and you break the law, you need to know that you're going to go to jail, you're going to get arrested. There are some good uses to civil citations, but I think we need to overhaul the program in a way to stop expanding it so much, but to contract it some. And it's a very simple, that's my position. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Candidate Watley, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
All right, the question is, please explain your position on civil citations and whether that program is working to improve the criminal justice system. You have 90 seconds.
Okay. The problem with the civil citation program is the one that is ran by Broward County is different than the one from the Florida legislature. The Florida legislature listed certain misdemeanor type crimes where the subject is given a citation, and then they try to find a way to help them improve or modify their behavior. Broward County in itself added crimes to the civil citation program. For example, like threats, sexual assault, bullying. Prior to MSD, you didn't hear of a student being arrested, and it didn't happen for making threats against the school. After MSD, you saw a chain of events where students were being arrested for making threats at a school because they decided to take that crime seriously. And it caused a problem. With the current one under Broward County, I'm not against the legislature, but the current one under the contract with Broward County, the one that they added crimes to it, assaults on teachers have gone up 26%. Another problem is that none of the teachers, and I talked to people in the teachers union, they stated, when you ask them all about the Promise program and the civil citation, the main word that comes out from each one of them, no matter what they say, is the word chaos. Nobody knows what's going on. So there's been a lack of accountability. I like the idea from legislature. I don't like the current one that is being run in Broward County. That's how MSD happened. Thank you.
Thank you. My next question goes to candidates Israel, Pollock, and Smalling. And that question is, what measures have you taken in your career, or what measures would you take as sheriff to bridge the gap of distrust between law enforcement and the community? So, candidate Israel, you will be first. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, sir. Good evening, Mr. Johnson, and thank you for being here. It's easy. I do what I did last time. The community, the agency has to understand that we exist as a policing agency for 2 reasons and 2 reasons alone, and that will never change. We exist to reduce crime, and we exist to enhance the quality of life of the citizens we serve. We work for the community, not the other way around. I believe I did a job of making sure the community and the agency understood one jersey, same jersey, not the Giants and the Cowboys. One jersey, one team, one fight. We did things that were cutting edge things that were never done before, that Republicans criticized me. I partnered with people like Wayne Martin, and we brought in over 5 million pounds of food for free that we distributed twice a month throughout the year. It says my last day as sheriff, even since I've been suspended, I've been doing these programs. And when you feed people, sir, and people pray with you, and people understand that you're allowing them nutrition to give their children and their grandchildren nutrition, you're going to gain that trust. And when you gain that trust, they're going to call you when that boy goes to school with a gun, or somebody's selling drugs, or a shooting on the block. They become one team, one fight, and we become together. You got to think outside the box. And I'd love to expound upon civil citation, and if there's an opportunity, and talk about the last 2 answers, which were egregious.
Thank you, Mr. Israel. Mr. Pollock, the question goes to you. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, sir. Let me start off by saying first, the Broward Sheriff's Office is a public safety agency. It's not just a regular police department. We service firefighters, paramedics, corrections. We also have probation, and we also have a component of law enforcement to include communications. One of the things that we need to do is, first of all, we need to build that trust back up with our community. We need to make that effort. We need to make that step to approach them and get things going. And I have did that in my past by adding additional Explorer programs. West Park never had an Explorer program. They wanted one. The past sheriffs and all never agreed to put one in. I was able to get one there. I was also able to build one in the city of Dania Beach, and we also maintain the one. One of the things I would do is I will make sure that every fire station that comes under the Broward Sheriff's Office have a junior firefighter program. And we will really go out and target our minorities communities because we have never did it before. I did it when I was there, but that's something that we need to continue. Also, the Citizens Police Academy, that was something that I thought was great because you didn't always have to come to BSO. BSO went to the community. That was stopped also, but that was one of the excellent programs where civilians get a chance to ride with law enforcement, to understand law enforcement.
Time.
Do you need to finish that thought?
Yeah, I got some other programs, you know, but, and I would just hire, you know, more civilians because instead of having police officers out on the street all the time, you know, a community outreach, a robust unit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollack. And last but not least, Mr. Smalling, you're up next. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think I got it.
All right, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, sir. I do want to go back, as Scott Israel said, that answer to the civil citation. I think there was some problems with that. I think there was some misunderstanding between the civil citation program and the promise program. The civil citation program is a good program. It works. I've done it in Lauderdale Lakes, and that's all I got to say about that. As far as bridging the gap with the community, this is something that I've done, and it starts from the top down. It starts from the leadership. The sheriff has to be able to be in the community. As the chief of police in Lauderdale, I was in the community. People saw me. My officers saw me, that I was out there, and I led by example. One of the things that I was most proud of when I got over to Lauderdale was doing a bicycle program where we had bicycle patrol. We actually would go out there, you know, take several little officers out during the day and actually ride with them. And my command staff did this as well. We also walked in the neighborhoods. I remember that my deputy chief and I, at one point, we walked a strip mall, and the people were surprised to see us. They were wondering, what are we doing out there? That's how you build that community bridge. That's how you build that trust, by being a part of the community. And it starts from the top down. It's not telling the deputies to go out there and doing it, but actually doing it yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Smalling, and thank you to all the candidates. That concludes my questions, and I yield back to our moderator, Vice Mayor Brian Johnson.
Thank you to all of the representatives. I did forget to mention that Dr. Salters was representing the men of Alpha Phi Alpha. This would usually be the time where I ask for us to wrap up, but I do want to at least ask one audience question, because as I'm looking at the chat, there's a bunch of questions regarding the same subject. So to the 350 people who are watching us now, please give us 10 more minutes because I want to throw this question in. So the question has to do with the fact that this is a public safety job. And yet there feels like a difference in the energy in keeping Black communities safe versus the energy that's being put out other places of the county. In what ways can we expect you as our sheriff to make Black people feel safe in the ways in which we've seen the energy placed in other parts of the county? And now, here's what I'll do. I forgot the order. The order would be reverse order, starting with Mr. Chuck Watley. Mr. Watley, you first.
Yeah, to better engage any community of color, they're going to have trust in the leader. When the leader, just like the leaders of the past, have a history of lying, falsifying documents, or even they go on these forums and lie and stuff, yet they say, trust me, trust me, trust me, I will be your friend. No. You have to find a leader that is always honest and truthful. Sometimes the truth hurts, but you want the truth. If you're going to get real things completed, real community relations built, it has to be on truth, which builds trust. And what I've seen from other candidates, past sheriffs, current sheriffs, all that work, you give out a ton of food, all you want, give out free toys, but once the truth comes out about you, about your corruption and your lies, it's all a waste. So that's how you work with the community. Letting them know, letting them get to know you personally. And I grew up at the 1400 block of Northwest 8th Avenue. So I know Broward County. So these areas are very dear to me. I had a lot of friends that lost their lives when I was a kid in those areas. And that's why I know that I can build that trust, because I am truthful and honest and sincere, and I am doing it out of heart. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Vasquez. Again, do you need me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I am here to serve you, the community, the Black community. What every other candidate here is failing to do is address the problems that we have in our Black community. We need to make sure that we have mentoring programs and coaching programs, and make sure that we have people that can go out in our communities, from our community leaders. We need to make sure that we have resources from nonprofit organizations that can come and help and assist our law enforcement in solving the problems that we have. A uniform is not always going to fix the issues. People are. We have issues that need to be resolved, and yet our sheriff's office is failing us now, then, and before. So if we address the Black issue in our communities, because Black issues is different colors, we need to address the issues from the root of the problem. And that's what I will be doing as Sheriff of Broward County, addressing the issues, reforming it, and rebuilding our agency for it.
Thank you, sir. Sheriff Gregory Tony, same question for you, sir.
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor, one of the biggest things that occurred here before I even accepted command of this office was the huge fragmentation amongst the white community and Black community because of the incident in Parkland. The shooting in Parkland drew a lot of attention for the white community. And the white community that has more disposable income and money had their voice heard, and it moved and changed a lot in this county, including getting to a point where the first Black sheriff was appointed here. And that's acceptable, it's understandable when the majority of the young Black people in this community are often forgot about. When they're murdered on the streets time and time again, when they're arrested and brutally beat by law enforcement officers, when they don't get the fair opportunities to be hired here, when they don't get opportunities for funding in their 501(c)(3)s, but yet millions of dollars come out of this organization and feed predominantly white 501(c)(3)s. We create a race issue when we ignore everyone, when we ignore the Black community and expect us to rally and show up and support candidates when it's time for an election. I stepped into this office with the sole purpose of focusing on this entire community and bringing equality and balance by promoting people of color, hiring people of color, investing millions of dollars back into this community, formulating our BSO youth mentoring program with the Divine Nine, who was invited over to start this. We committed $250,000, and that will go up to $1 million. When you start reaching and touching everyone and not ostracizing anyone, that's how you unite a community.
All right, thank you. Before we move on, Sheriff Tony, when you do your closing, can you clarify where that $250,000 went? Because I got a couple of questions on that. And
Sure.
All right, Mr. Smalling, same question. How are you going to make Black people feel as safe as we've been emphasizing other people being safe in the county?
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor. You know, I think a lot of it has to do with communication. In my career, I've been in the Black community. I grew up in the Black community. My law enforcement service has been in the Black community. And I feel it's no different really than any other community. Why do we over police certain communities? Because we think they are, quote, more violent. It's because of lack of communication. We don't talk to the people in the community. We don't talk to the stakeholders. Of course, there are certain individuals in our communities, whether they're Black or white, that are lawbreakers. We are law enforcement officials. We have to enforce the law, but we don't have to go beyond and above, all right? There's so many different examples of that. I can give you examples of when, you know, we would respond to a certain location and the mentality would be, well, we need to use as much force as possible. Or we need to bring out canine. when we wouldn't do that in other communities. So it has to be an awareness, it has to be a sensitivity from the leader, and it has to be accountability towards those leaders to deal with all communities equally and fairly.
Thank you, Mr. Smalling. Next up would be Mr. Pollack. Same question.
Thank you, sir. One of the first things that we have to do, because a lot of us want to be experts in the Black community, but we're not. So one of the first things that I would do is, number one, we got to listen. We can't always assume that we know what the Black community needs or what they want without sitting down with the people in those communities and talking with them and working with them. And we have to be consistent. And most of all, we have to be honest. And it starts with everyone. It starts from the sheriff. It starts with all of our employees, not just law enforcement. Like I said earlier, we're a public safety agency. The fire department have to bring the same service, the same level of services that we do for all communities. Our correction department treat everybody the same, when they unfortunately, have to be placed into that type of facility. You got to treat people with dignity and also, with respect. You can't be a Showtime sheriff. And what I mean by that is anytime the news media come along and we want to highlight the agency, where do we go? We go in the Black community and we do proactive enforcement and everybody goes to jail. That's not what our community is about, okay? I'm tired of people putting labels on the Black community, saying, oh, you can't go over here because it's a bad community. It's not a bad community. We just have a few bad people that live in that community. There are some good people there. Not everybody is bad. Unfortunately, because of economic situations, they are unable to move to the north or the west side of our county.
Time.
Mr. Pollack, you want to finish that thought?
Yes, sir.
Real quickly, a couple seconds.
Okay, in closing, we just can't over police our communities. And what I mean by that is the Black communities, okay? They don't want to be over policed. They just want to be treated fairly and with dignity.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Willie Jones, same question. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
It's sad that that question had to be phrased that way, because we shouldn't be talking about how we police a Black community. In 2016, when the question was asking me, was our Black communities policed differently? My answer was yes. I told that to the editorial board in 2016. We knew there was a problem then. Now, what we should be talking about is equal policing, equal safety, justice for all. And if you put those things in place, we won't be talking black and white. We need to make sure this agency do what they're supposed to do, and that's serve as everybody. One of the things we're talking about doing is dual enrollment, putting a program in the high school so we can start training our children, not only for law enforcement, but for detention, corrections, and firefighters. So when they get out of high school, they're already certified and they're already a part of the community. Most of the people who come to our community, they're from outside. They're not invested. They don't have an investment in our community. These kids, these people already have an investment. So thus they already have a buy-in to make things just and equal within our community. And the warrior mentality came from the broken windows syndrome, quantity versus quality. We must change that and start producing quality personnel, rules, regulations, policies, ethics, morale for all of our citizens in Broward County, but more especially for the communities that's been over-policed and underserved.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Israel, Scott Israel, same question, sir. You need me to repeat the question?
No, sir. Vice Mayor Johnson, there's no magic mantra. It's about hard work, being visible, and treating people with dignity and respect. As my grandma used to say, and I bet a lot of grandmas out there used to say, the proof is in the pudding. In 2012, when I became the sheriff of Broward County, I received approximately 69% of the Black vote in Broward County. When I ran for re-election, please hear this to everyone listening in. When I ran for re-election, I received almost 90% of the African-American vote in Broward County. That's the voters' way of saying, Sheriff Israel, you and your command staff, you and the agency, you and the firefighters, you did your job. I was out at the African American, or the Urban League with Al Pollock one day, and a woman, it was the best compliment I've ever got, a woman who was a mom from Lauderdale Lakes. She said, before Scott Israel came, she says, before he was sheriff, our young kids, we ran away from cop cars. Now we run towards them. It was about playing basketball. It was about playing football. I'll close with this story, sir. I was at an event with my wife down in your neck of the woods, Vice Mayor Johnson, over at the Diplomat, and we were at a red carpet event.
You got a few seconds, sir. Just a few seconds.
Thank you, sir. We were at a red carpet event, and there was some after red carpet parties, and we had selected the one we were going to go to. And as we were walking to the parking garage to go to the event we were going to go to, I got a call from a football coach who had the Paco Rattlers at Oviedo McKeithen Park in Deerfield Beach. Okay. 30 minutes later, my wife was on an apron. I had my cummerbund off, and we were scooping ice cream to 8 and 9-year-olds because I made a promise to them when they had their sleepover at Oviedo McKeithen, I'd be there. That's what community policing is all about.
I'll stop you right there. Thank you, sir. And H. Wayne Clark, same question.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Whoever asked you that question, I hope it was a lot of people, because my response would be, if you feel like your communities have been slighted by the former administration or the current administration, why would you ever vote for them? Vote for somebody else, whether it's me, the Republican, or one of these other gentlemen on the panel as a Democrat. But why would you keep voting the same way if you feel oppressed like that? Me, what I'm going to do as sheriff, I'm going to treat everyone equally. We're not going to treat anybody differently based on race, sexual orientation, for any reason. We're going to treat all communities equally. We're not going to give promotions based solely on one political factor. In fact, we're going to take politics out of the Broward Sheriff's Office. And it's simple. How do you fix Broward Sheriff's Office? I go back to an hour or so ago, and I talk about the culture of the agency. The culture of the agency has got to change. We've got to take politics away from there. We've got to stop treating certain communities different because we think we can buy a vote. Nobody wants to be bought. Everybody wants to be treated equally. And that's what needs to happen in Broward County. So again, if you're asking this question and you feel like you haven't been treated equally, I wouldn't vote for either one of those gentlemen up there that have served. I would vote for someone else on the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So here is the part where we should close out. We've done a few extra minutes. We're going to give you each 1 minute to close. I thank you all and thank all of those who are watching. We're at 330 right now still. Thank you all for hanging around with us. Each of you gentlemen have 1 minute. Timekeeper, 1 minute on the clock, please.
Vice Mayor, you had a specific question about the program. Did you want to do that here or offline?
We just don't have time unless one of the organizers gives me permission to go over because this is going to take about 10 minutes and that'll lead us at 8:30 when we do our final closing remarks by the president of the sorority. So we can do some offline stuff. I can share some of the additional questions that I received. If any of you are interested in it, we'll email those to you. But I feel obligated to close down the session now to not punish the punctual. So at this point, again, going back to in alphabetical order, 1 minute closing statement starting with H. Wayne Clark, and you are on now, sir.
Let me thank you very much, Vice Mayor, for a great forum tonight. Let me thank all the other candidates. Hopefully everyone out there that's listened has paid close attention. If you want things to stay status quo, you want to continue to get no confidence votes, you want to keep having the morale at Broward Sheriff's Office in the lowest of any agency in the country, then vote for those that have been running the agency. If you want to take politics away from the agency, you want to fix the agency, then vote for me. And I tell you this, if you're a citizen of Broward County, Broward Sheriff's Office touches every aspect of every individual, from the seaport to the airport, to the detention, jails, to the courthouse, law enforcement, fire, EMS, mental health, community service, and the call centers. Whoever runs that department or whoever runs that agency needs to run it as a whole and not one in particular part of the agency. You're never going to fix it if you leave politics at Broward Sheriff's Office. Thank you very much, and everyone have a great evening. God bless.
Sir, Scott Israel, you have 1 minute to close, and thank you all in advance for sticking to the 1 minute, so we'll get you out of here by 8:30. Mr. Israel, you have 1 minute starting now, sir. Take yourself off mute, please, sir, and start over. Timekeeper, start over. Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Sorry about that, sir. I read Psalm 91 every day. I know that if I seek shelter from the Most High, I'm protected under the wings of the Almighty. My job was taken from me wrongly. Ladies and gentlemen listening out there, I'm that person you know that went to jail that shouldn't be in jail, that was suspended for something they didn't do. I was a Democrat, and a Republican removed me from office because he catered to a group of people from Parkland. I respectfully and fraternally, humbly ask you, give me my job back, allow me to do the things I stood for. I had the back of this community for almost 7 years, and I ask that you have my back, allow me to get back in office and continue to do the things that we did this for the community. I appreciate you listening, and God bless each and every one. I'm recovering for COVID, and to everybody out there who called me and sent me prayers and thoughts, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and from my family to yours. I hope you and your families remain safe.
Thank you, sir. Willie Jones, closing statement. You have 1 minute, sir.
Thank you very much. Now, listeners, it's your time. It's your decision. You've heard all these candidates. You've heard them talk about what they will do. I am going to tell you right now, many of them have been in the place of authority, power, and influence. They had the opportunity to make these changes or make them now that they're talking about, but they did not. They failed our communities. So the question now is you, why would you vote for Willie Jones? It's because I've served the community for 40 years. I'm ethically and morally grounded. I'm always looking for solutions to better this community. I will make the hard decisions, like boldly moving into the 21st century, implementing that to make the changes. I didn't have to wait to Mr. Floyd's death. Now we cannot gamble with our children's future or the future of this community. It's time to commit and unite this community. Remember, unity equals one community. And if we want to take our community back and make it safe, you're listening to the only candidate that talked about change 6 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up for closing statements, Mr. Al Pollack. You have 1 minute to close us out, sir.
Thank you, sir. I want to just first of all thank the panelists and thank everyone who are with us tonight, who joined us, and for listening. What I would tell you is, please do your research. I want to be your sheriff because you need to elect an honest sheriff, a sheriff with experience, qualified, and a person who's capable. If you do not want change, keep what you got. I will bring about police reform in this county. I know I can, and I will do it. I'm the only Democrat that didn't switch from Republican to Democrat. When I was able to vote at 18 years old, I was a Democrat. I don't switch to win races. I am true to what I believe in. I'm the only Democrat that has a plan to move this county forward. Everybody keeps talking about the have-beens and what somebody took. It's time to move this county forward into the 21st century. Unfortunately, we should not have waited for a Mr. Floyd to take place to bring about change. The leaders should have did that from the beginning. We need leaders that think out of the box and that's going to protect our children and our community. With that said, I'm drawing on my 40 years of law enforcement experience. Please vote for Al Pollack if you want change. I promise you I'll bring that change.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smalling, 1 minute closing statement starting now.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to thank the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta for this wonderful panel. I've been looking forward to it for a while now, and all the panelists that took part in it. We're here right now, 9 of us, I guess there's 9 of us in this race running for sheriff. And we're here because of failed policies. We're here because of failed leadership. And we're here because of personal scandals. And it seems like it continues to go on and on. The editorial that I read from at the beginning has one particular sentence in it, in the whole editorial, that sticks out the most to me. And it says, the voters have to make the right choice. The voters have to make the right choice. We got to get it right this time. There's 5,500 men and women in the Broward Sheriff's Office and countless others that are dependent on us. Vote for me, vote for Andrew Smalling. I have the ability, I have the character. I've been in leadership positions before, executive positions, and I can do it again. Andrew Smalling for Sheriff, August 18th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smalling. Sheriff Gregory Tony, you have 1 minute closing statement. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank the entire panel and the group who's been monitoring online for the opportunity to speak to them directly. I came into this organization roughly 19 months ago and rectified all the different failures between active shooter, reinvested $1 million back into public safety, diversified this organization like it has never been done before. And we are on the path of progress. And what I would encourage this community to do is closely monitor what has occurred. Go to sheriff.org/Sheriff Tony and look at your website, not a campaign site, but what we've done and how we performed. We can't afford to go back to broken promises of the past and hope that people who have served in this organization for decades on will finally get it right if you put them in this position. This organization is being run by dedicated BSO personnel who deserve to continue to push this agency forward. To roll the dice and risk losing all these good people is unfair to the service that they've put in place and how they've committed their entire careers to this county. If I'm afforded an opportunity to continue to lead this organization, you can rest assured that we will not change a single thing when it comes to personnel and what we are doing that's best for this community. So, Vice Mayor, thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. Mr. Santiago Vasquez, you have 1 minute in closing statement starting now.
I want to thank God, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to be here with you today. I need you to vote for me for positive change, because as sheriff, I will give you a police department to be proud of and to trust and to utilize as a resource for a better Broward. Together, we will make our community a safe and protected environment for our elderly, our children, our minorities, the LGBTQ, and all citizens. I want a sheriff's office that inspires confidence and not fear, that saves lives and not takes lives. I am proud to be your Democratic candidate for a positive change to law enforcement for Broward County, because I believe in better and I believe in Broward, and we need positive change in our department. If you ask any deputy, any sergeant, are they happy? The answer will be no. Let's change that. Positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. And last but not least, Mr. Chuck Watley, you have 1 minute to close, starting now.
Thank you very much. All through this debate and past debates, we've all heard the same thing. All the candidates speaking about honesty, integrity, accountability, and transparency. However, based on their past practices, that has not happened. You have Sheriff Tony, who committed fraudulent acts to become a police officer and then committed fraud to become the Broward Sheriff's Office, the head of the Broward Sheriff's Office. Then you have like Alvin Pollock. He says he climbed his way through the ranks to colonel, but that didn't really happen. He was never a lieutenant. He was never a captain. He was never a major. He never passed the lieutenant's test. He's given colonel because he helped with the campaign. And the one time that he could have stepped up to the plate as a leader, taking accountability, a man beats his wife, puts her in the hospital. And what does Pollock do? He helps out the man. I want to know is who was helping out the woman? This is the things that have gone on at the sheriff's office for 30 years. And then you got Scott Israel. After MSD, all you heard was, it's not my fault. It's not my fault.
I need you
so that's why I'm running for Broward County Sheriff. Enough's enough.
Mr. Watley, thank you, sir. Listen, to the candidates, thank you all so much for participating. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. It is time for us to close. We pray that you and your families. Continue to stay safe. We have about 21 days left until all of this is over with, from one candidate to the next. Stay strong.
Oh, I'm not in the primary, so.
Okay, you're not in primary. Okay, for those of us in the primary.
I'm in PA. I'm not in the primary.
Thank you so much. To the panelists, Dr. Salters, Mr. Hyatt, Dr. Gaines, and Mr. Johnson, thank you all for representing your organizations nobly. To the partners, the NAACP, the Urban League, YPN Network, and the Women of Color Empowerment, thank you all for what you've done. And of course, to the lovely ladies of the Broward County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, thank you for having me, this bald guy with a bow tie, as your moderator. Now, the last words you hear will be from somebody much cuter than I. Tracy Barneswell, who's the president of the Broward County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. Mrs. Barneswell.
Yes, thank you so much. Gentlemen, what a great job tonight. Thank you all for your time and your effort. I am Tracy Barneswell, the president of the Broward County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And on behalf of those ladies, along with all of our partners tonight, and Vice Mayor did such a great job listing everyone. I don't think I have to reiterate them all, but thank you so much. But because of the plight of our Black men, we thought it fitting that the men of Alpha, Kappa, and Sigma, and Omega be intimately involved. And they did such a wonderful job tonight. So thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate all the work that you do and the things that you do to represent your organization. And to our magnificent moderator, the man with the bald head and the bow tie, Mr. Vice Mayor Brian Johnson, you did such a fabulous job. Great job tonight for holding everyone accountable for their time and their responses. So wonderful job tonight. And to our sheriff candidates, thank you so much for joining us and your willingness to serve the community and to answer the tough questions. We wish you all the best of luck in your endeavors. And thanks again for being with us tonight. In closing, I want you to please remember, get out to vote. Early voting begins August 8th, the primary August 18th, the general is November 3rd. And don't forget the power in vote by mail. It's there for us. And during these difficult times, we cannot be complacent. We must be willing to act. And that is by voting, by being involved, and by being a part of the solution. Sometimes we have to get in trouble, right? And just make sure it's good and necessary trouble. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much.
As a quick housekeeping matter before everyone depart, for our attendees, please be aware we have an evaluation that's been posted in Zoom. Evaluation have been posted in YouTube as well as Facebook. So for all of the participants as well as the attendees that are appearing virtually, if you would take a moment this afternoon, this evening, or tomorrow to complete that evaluation, we'd greatly appreciate it. And thank you all for a wonderful evening.
Thank you all.
God bless.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you.
God bless everybody.
God bless.
Great form, great job.
Mr. Vice Mayor, CNN has a job waiting for you.
Go, Jasmine.
God bless everyone. Take care.
Mr. Noah.
Bye-bye.
God bless. God bless.
God bless you. Thank you.
Everybody be safe.
Bye, Willie.
Bye-bye. Be safe.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Thanks.